Welcome to the Apple Insider Podcast. This is your host, Stephen Robles, and today it's all about previewing WWDC. It is just a few days away, happening Monday, June 5th. We're going to talk about all the latest rumors and leaks and what we will expect, plus Apple Music Classical on Android, and my good friend William is back. This episode is brought to you by Kolide, and like I just said, William, it's so good to hear your voice. Welcome back.
And you. It's so nice to be here. I've been off building up my political base. We've got elections. I'm going for Make Great Britain Again.
Wait a minute. I think it's already taken. That's already taken. Don't even bother. Now, wait a minute. Are you at liberty to say what you've been doing, or has this been like MI6 secret agent stuff?
I tried to avoid telling people what I was doing because I was away for a month. The longest I've ever been away on a holiday. Literally. Yes. And I thought, I'm very conscious of the fact that basically I'm saying all this expensive Mac gear is in my office. Knock yourself out. So while I was away, I was trying not to say it.
Sure.
But now I'm back and I can't shut up about it, really. So try to stop me.
Well, what were you doing? You still haven't said.
Yes, there's this habit of secrecy.
It's like, you really are getting up for that political run because you've just said a bunch of things without saying anything. It's amazing.
That's true. The important thing to focus on here is that I was away on a cruise.
Oh,
actually.
Suffering.
In theory, which restaurant do I go to today? I don't know. It was originally intended to celebrate my 25th wedding anniversary, but what with COVID delays and all this stuff, it's actually this year's my 29th.
Wow.
So it's a very long waited time, but
amazing.
Also the furthest the longest I've been away from the keyboard in my entire adult life. So very strange.
Congratulations for 29 years. And it was a river cruise, right?
No, that's another story. It was an ocean cruise. Flew to Tokyo, then went up through Alaska, ended up in Vancouver for an hour or so.
What in the world? Yeah. I thought you were doing some European river cruise right across the channel there. You went to Japan?
Yes, it was wonderful in Japan.
My goodness.
Actually, I realised because we flew east to Japan and then from Vancouver flew west back to London, I actually went around the world in this. And I'm shocked how long it took me to realise I'd done that.
That's amazing. You are now the most interesting man in the world. This is incredible. And wow. Okay, now you have a note in here. I'm curious if this has to do with some of your travels, but something about your iPhone clock. What is that?
I am shocked.
Shocked
at this. Let down by Apple with a clock.
What?
You seriously ready for this?
Yes.
I've been practicing how to tell you this to make it short. Okay. Unless you do something differently, everyone's iPhone gets the time from the internet. We know this.
From space.
And in fact, we actually know where it gets it from. It gets it from a server called time.apple.com.
Oh.
Fine. While I was on the ship, we were crossing time zones and things, and you follow the ship's time. We had to keep changing our clocks manually as we went across all the seas and stuff. Fine. Okay, so you do that. You switch off automatic. You change the time to whatever you're supposed to be, and that's all okay. But as well as the time on your phone, iPhones also have that world clock.
Right.
And I assumed the world clock also got that figure from the internet, but it does not. It's a lookup table, it seems. What? So the last time I was on automatic was, I think, when I left Japan. And at that point, I'm mixing up the figures here, but the UK was 8 hours behind. So the world clock said what time it was in the UK when I was phoning my mother and things. But forever afterwards, it insisted that London was always 8 hours behind, whatever the time was on my phone. So as you know, I crossed the international date line. I went up. At one point, we were actually 8 hours behind and then 13 back and all this stuff. And all the way through, no, says the iPhone, you're 8 hours ahead of the UK. And I wasn't. The number of times I actually Googled, what the hell is the time in the UK now? It started auto-completing that whenever I would go into. So
were you referring to like a widget for the world clock? And it just wouldn't change?
I mean the actual clock app on the iPhone.
Really?
For it, yeah. Is that not shocking?
That is, wow.
Because, I mean, I'd understand if there weren't an internet connection, and actually at times there weren't. But there's nothing in there to say switch off automatic on everything, not just my current time. So I was genuinely really quite taken aback, because I'm hardly going to be the first person who's ever found this. So what are they doing it to? Why are they doing it to me?
That's weird. That's very strange. Well, I'm also traveling actually in a couple weeks, and so I'll have to experiment with the world clock as well.
Yes.
Won't be going across the entire world like you just did.
Oh.
But that's amazing. What Apple devices did you bring along with you? Did you just bring your iPhone, or were you traveling with your iPhone?
No, I had my iPhone, Apple Watch, obviously, and also my iPad Pro, plus a Note Air 2, an e-ink reader.
Oh, wow.
And at the start of the holiday, I really liked that because all you could realistically do on it was read books. So I read 4 novels in a row and a few scripts. I read the script to She Said, which is amazing. Really hard read, so I don't know if I've got the nerve to watch the film yet, but it's so good I must. But then this whole thing of you could only do this on an iPad, you could do all sorts of other things. I ended up wanting to do all sorts of other things, so
Sure.
I got out my iPad, and it was like day and night. I didn't get the Note Air out again. iPads are fantastic, aren't they?
Yeah,
They're just
they're
wonderful.
they're pretty nice. You know, maybe if you had gone on this trip in a couple months, you could have brought the Apple headset and just lived in VR the whole time.
Yeah, sailing by a glacier off the coast of Alaska at sunset. Let's put some Apple goggles on and play Pac-Man. That's the dream. Yes.
Oh my goodness, William, you sailed by a glacier at sunset.
Many, many glaciers.
Oh my goodness.
Glacier Bay, all the way from Dutch Harbor down to
That's amazing.
Narrows.
Listen,
Yeah.
I've been on an ocean cruise in New England in the fall, and that was beautiful. You know, I got to go up to Canada, Halifax, see all the leaves changing, but I never got a chance to go to Alaska yet. I want to do an Alaskan cruise.
Well, stop talking to me right now. Go do it.
Just go do it.
This moment.
Just go leave
Yeah.
right now.
Yes.
I don't know. I kind of want to stick around to see what's happening on Monday because Monday.
Oh, that's a good point. Yes.
It's going to be a big day.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to talk about. One quick 5-star review shout out. I don't know, maybe you did this as you were traveling around the world under a pseudonym, but Lord Helmchen Lord Helmchen 76 from Germany gave us 5-star review. So thanks for that review.
No, I never go higher than Lord Helmchen 72.
Oh, okay.
That's my
that's your
rule,
limit.
and I stick to it.
That's your limit. William, I cannot tell you how excited I am for WWDC this Monday. I mean, obviously we have lots of rumors, lots of leaks, but I don't know how you feel. It feels like this is the first time, like this is the most hype Apple has heaped upon one of its own events. It literally has a tweet and a sponsored post I've seen in multiple places. They're saying a new era begins.
Yes.
I mean, that's a big statement. It's saying code. One of the other ads that they sent out, or the emails they sent out to everyone earlier this week saying watch the event, it said code new worlds. New worlds, a new era. They are hyping this up so much. I can't take it, William. Are you excited too? I'm pretty pumped.
I'm actually a bit schizophrenic about this because on the one hand, this is going to be one of the most interesting WWDCs ever, really.
Oh my goodness.
But on the other, I'm not interested in headsets. I mean, they're going to have to convince me that it's worth it. Plus, a lot of the hype, as there is every single year, at the moment, it's certain that Apple's releasing loads of Macs. And then, you know, a minute after the presentation, when Apple hasn't announced any Macs, it'll be, of course they weren't going to announce Macs. It's a software company. Yeah, there won't be any Mac. Yeah. There might be Macs if there's a Mac Pro, because that would complete Apple Silicon that was announced at WWDC.
Right.
There might be a Mac, if there's an M3 a little bit earlier than we expect, then that would fit as well. But other than that, all the Macs that are being tested now, I'm sure they're just going to come out in the next month or two after WWDC.
I would like to remind you and our listeners that the last Apple event, if you go to apple.com/events and you go down and it's view recent Apple events, the last one was September 7th, 2022. That is, 9 to 10 months ago was the last actual Apple event. This WWDC is the first event this year in 2023. It's the first event since the iPhone event last year. I mean, they've been releasing stuff by a press release. You know, they've had, they released devices, obviously, in the last few months via press release. But, man, I don't know, William. It feels like this is going to be a big one. I know we try to temper our expectations, especially when it comes to hardware. But one of the big rumors even this week, Gurman saying they're testing M2 Max and M2 Ultra Max, which could mean an updated Mac Studio. And we still have this 15-inch MacBook Air floating around. And like you said, the Mac Pro, which John Turnus said at an event, a year ago, 2 years ago, no, I guess it was a year ago, last Dub or around then.
It was last WWDC, yes. It said it's coming.
Yeah, they said there's still one Mac to go. And then we have been waiting ever since for the Apple Silicon Mac Pro. I mean, I don't know, man. I think it's going to be a big deal. I think it's big.
The way I see it, Apple is really, really good on choosing when to announce stuff. There are two big points in the year every year. There's WWDC's keynote, and then there's the iPhone launch. They are when the world spotlight is on. So if Apple wants something big, it will put them in one of those two slots. Fine. But it's also never going to dilute the impact by having tons of things. It won't slip in one more thing. Here's the car, for example. It's not, it's very, very focused. It will either concentrate on something or it will use something it knows will be big to bring up something else. Like the Apple Watch was always part of the iPhone thing because maybe fewer people would look at the watch one, but they were all looking at the iPhone one. And more recently, the watch has become, enough of itself. It doesn't need that uplift.
Right.
I just don't see Apple going, oh, and another thing, we've got a slightly bigger MacBook Air. And another thing, we've got, an iPod in pink or something. It's going to be really targeted, really focused. So I don't believe the story that it's going to be 2 hours plus. I'm close to certain there won't be anywhere near as much as everybody says will be in it. But the potential for any one of these things, except for new Macs, I think is high.
I think here's how I'm predicting it's going to go. All right. Tim Cook's going to get out there. He's going to celebrate.
Good morning. Yes. Sorry, I'm trying to do his voice there. Yeah.
Good morning. He's going to talk about some of the wonderful numbers that Apple has to tout, the apps and monies and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to show a clip from my Apple Music Classical review. I fully expect that to happen. Then they're going to just dump these Macs in like 20 seconds. They're going to say, we got a 15-inch MacBook Air. We're updating our Mac Studio. And maybe they mention the Mac Pro, maybe not. I'm honestly not convinced about that one. They do some early hardware stuff. Then they jump into the iOS. They jump into watchOS, iPadOS, macOS. And then at the end of the event, they talk about the VR headset and they announce whatever developer kits are available and the software packages or whatever. 90 minutes in and out. They just dump it all. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, in that case, I will bet on a tight 1 hour, 60
1
minutes.
hour.
Oh, yes, they can do it. But also, last time at WWDC, when they did announce new Macs, it was folded into the macOS section because it was related to that. So it was straight in on Apple's wonderful, yeah. Then iOS, then macOS. iOS, watchOS, then macOS, and at the end of macOS. So here are the Macs that we're going to be doing this with. And then they had it. And then on to whatever was.
They actually put iPadOS at the very end, it looks like.
Oh, right.
Because they talked about macOS, continuity camera, and all that. Yeah, and then at the very end, it was iPadOS. And they showed off Stage Manager on iPad, which I still have yet to use, really. But I will tell you, William, last year's WWDC, hour 48 minutes. It was not a tight hour. It was an hour 48. Just saying.
Well, then I'm shocked at them.
Just saying. I'm just saying. I think this.
They can do better than that.
No. I think it's. I think it's going to be 2 hours. I said 90 minutes. I think it's going to be 2 hours. You go for an hour. We bet around the world cruise.
Okay.
That's going to be what we have. What we owe each other. Whoever's right, and we're going to see.
Right. Do you know how much that cost me? That cruise. It's not going to happen again. Okay.
Once in a lifetime. I want to talk about more stuff about iOS 17 and some of Mark Gurman's iOS 17 predictions, and we can get into maybe that in our wish list in a bit. I just want to cover a couple news pieces, which Apple actually did launch something else this week, even the week before WWDC, which was Apple Music Classical is now available on Android. So if you want Apple Music Classical, you can get it on iPhone and you can get it on Android. I am wondering why no podcasts. I thought this is kind of bizarre. I really thought Apple would have brought the Apple Podcasts app to Android before Apple Music Classical, if only for the fact that it could pull in some revenue if people subscribe to podcasts in the Apple Podcasts app. And like this podcast, the Apple Insider podcast, you could support the show directly in Apple Podcasts, get the ad-free version, early access or whatever. But for Android users, no dice, they can go to Patreon. But it would be so nice if any mobile user, Android or iPhone, could just subscribe in Apple Podcasts. So I thought this was interesting, a little weird. I guess maybe because Apple Music is already on Android, this was like an easier port over and all just connects to the same back-end stuff. I don't know, but I thought that was strange.
Has anybody actually checked to see if it's true? I mean, Apple says it. I'm never going to go get an Android phone to look it up. They could just say
It's on the Play.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's on the Play Store. You can you can literally go in our article, click the Google Play link, and it says Apple Music Classical right here. Install. Oh, now wait a minute. Classical. The first A is an @ symbol. Maybe this is an Apple. No, I'm just kidding. That's not real.
That's a bit.
That's not it. That's
Oh, phew.
no.
Okay.
Totally kidding.
Oh.
Totally kidding. So no, this is an official Apple Music Classical app. Already has 1-star reviews, as you would expect. I'm just looking at the Google Play Store.
Well, yeah, because it's Apple, it's automatically going to be downvoted
Right,
on
sure.
Google, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm not as surprised as you about the podcast. Now you've said it, I see the point, but it hadn't occurred to me. What I thought first was it came to Android before it came to the iPad or the Mac, which is actually where I think I would use it more, as it happens. So
that is true. You can use the blown up version on the iPad if you want to just run the iPhone app and just
ugly experience.
It's really terrible. Yeah, no one should ever do that. But did you use it at all on your world trip?
Not on the world trip, actually. I was playing some Marvelous Fifth a lot before I went away, but then for some reason I was doing all sorts of stuff, balancing what I could download beforehand and what I would spend my mobile data on in the end, and I didn't actually use a lot of Apple Music in any way.
Did you bring a MagSafe battery pack by chance on this trip?
Many. Well, I brought 3. Well, no, 2.5.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
How do you bring half a battery pack?
You forget that you've got it until it's too late. That's what you do. Yeah.
You only used it halfway through the trip. I see.
Actually, I really needed it. There was one day, every time we would get off the ship, the battery would just sink like a stone. For it, much more than I did at home. And also I bought an eSIM, and I found that some of my mobile data was being used, even though I went in and I switched off things like photo syncing, because I was obviously taking a lot of photographs. I knew that would take a lot of room, mobile data. There's an app called Teleprompter that I used once for 20 minutes to do something, and it decided to take, for some reason, 700 megabytes of my 1 gigabyte eSIM allowance. So thanks very much there. And Apple's system services took 500 megabytes. And I cannot figure that one out, but I had to buy another top-up on the eSIM. But I used Airlow. I have a video series called 58 Keys, and a viewer of that, Stuart Billison, he recommended Airlow as this easy way to get an eSIM in any country you're in. And I did it for Japan, I did it for Alaska, I did it for Vancouver as well. And all the British roaming charges didn't worry me anymore.
Your carrier doesn't have that kind of thing where you can just pay like $10.
It's astoundingly complicated
Really?
here. I went through, I'm with 3, and I went through their websites here in the UK, and I genuinely didn't understand it. So I asked their support people, and I genuinely didn't understand. If you bought the phone or your contract before this date, but not after that date, and you did this because you did that, and you went to here, but not there, you could do this, but not that. And in the end, just bought an eSIM for it.
My word. Yeah. See, apparently for AT&T, which is my U.S. carrier, you can pay $10 a day, which I guess if you're gone for a whole month, that actually is not economical, because that would be like $300. But $10 a day, you just use your plan. So if I have unlimited data and everything here in the U.S., $10 a day, which I'm going to do this on my trip because I'm just gone for a week.
Yeah.
So it'll be $70, but $70, and I just use my phone like normal.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, I as well as installing the eSIM, which I found a little bit fiddly, uninstalling it afterwards and getting back. And actually, somewhere along the way, something has changed with my settings. And instead of, I get mixed up over which is the blue and which is the green dot in messages. But somebody said I wasn't getting the right colour, the same colour that I used to send them. And I had to look into it. And yes, something strange had happened. But it's all fixed now. So.
Okay, all right, very good. That's interesting. Yeah, with the eSIM and stuff. I'm curious if people have traveled to other countries and how the eSIM works. I know Austin Mann.
Oh, yeah. He must do this all the time.
Yeah, he had gotten, I think it was the iPhone 14 last year, and he was traveling to a country in Africa, and he was saying there is no eSIM in the country that he was going to. He would typically have just bought a regular SIM card and popped it in, but there's no SIM card slot. And so he was, I'm like, I guess I'll just keep an iPhone 12 or 13 around while I do it. So that's weird. If you guys, listeners, have traveled and have experience with the eSIM when traveling, I'd be curious because I used to do that when I worked for a travel company for a while. I bought a 3 SIM actually when I went to England, and it was just prepaid SIM. I bought it in the airport, I think, before I left, and I had a month of service on there for pretty cheap, honestly, and it was pretty nice.
Those were the days.
Those were the days. So they don't have that kind of stuff anymore, like just prepaid, just pop it in, huh?
Before Brexit, all of the mobile phone companies here said, of course we're not going to change. Just because we would be allowed to increase fees, we're not going to do it. It'll stay exactly the same, never you mind. Instantaneously, all of them raised their figures. And it's just, of course they would. So, yes. Anyway, calm, serenity, life. Okay.
That's wild. Well, all right. One other piece of news, and then I want to hear about your thoughts on Final Cut, because you've not been on the show since
it came out.
Yeah, Final Cut on iPad. I have even more thoughts because I tried editing again on it. So one other quick piece of news: Meta, right ahead of WWDC. Strange timing, very strange timing. Meta, also Facebook, known as Facebook, has released their Quest 3, or announced that it is going to be $500. I don't know all the specifics and the tech specs and stuff. I'll refer you to our article for that. But they unveiled it, and I just think the timing is curious, William. Very curious.
Well, the fact that partway through the announcement says coming this fall, and then later more details on September the 27th. It's like it's 4 months before.
It's a long way away.
We know that Apple, if they announce it at all, they're announcing it so developer can get started, and it's going to be a while before it actually goes on sale. They could still bring it out before Meta Quest 3 hits the stores, just about. So yes, I was quite amused by that.
It's coming this fall, and they said in a Instagram post, this is Zuck's Instagram post, which I guess on Instagram he's just Zuck, Z-U-C-K, which is very close to the word yuck, but we won't go there. It says...
and to be fair, other words, but this is a family show.
Sorry.
So
I wasn't even thinking that. Yeah, okay. Very worldly minded over there, William, after the world traveling. But he says the Quest 3 will be the best way to experience mixed and virtual reality in a standalone device. That might be an accurate statement right now. We'll see about after next week. We'll see after Monday if that is actually the case. You still have to use it. I see controllers in the hands, and I feel like that's going to be one of the big differentiators. Like, I don't think you're going to have to hold anything with Apple's headset.
Monday, though. Weird when you say it like that. We'll know on Monday. It seems so soon.
Monday. Like 2 or 3 days away, depending on when you listen.
Unless, of course, Apple doesn't announce it, and all it means is that there's a 0.1 update to Swift UI or something, and that's the real
Listen,
big news. You never know.
After listening to Jason Snell and John Gruber, I mentioned this last week, I listened to them on the talk show, and they were like, if Apple wasn't going to announce anything headset related, they would have leaked or pushed something down through the grapevine or gone to some of their inside friends at the New York Times. Like, they would have gotten word out for people not to expect it. But right now, like, the pent up expectation that all Monday is about is the headset and these things talking about a new era begins and code new worlds directly from Apple. Forget about it.
Unless Tim Cook is going to resign.
No, William.
And he's just having some giggles playing with our attention.
Nope, way off.
Wow.
Way off.
Well,
it is
got to happen sometime. So, okay.
This episode is brought to you by our friends at Kolide. They have some big news. If you're an Okta user, and I know what that is, it's single sign-on, then they can get your entire fleet to 100% compliance. How does Kolide do it? Well, if a device isn't compliant, the user can't log in to your cloud apps until they fix the problem. It's that simple. Kolide patches one of the major holes in zero trust architecture, which is device compliance. Without Kolide, IT struggles to solve basic problems like keeping everyone's OS and browser up to date, unsecured devices, or logging into your company's apps because there's nothing there to stop them. Well, Kolide is the only device trust solution that enforces compliance as part of authentication, and it's built to work seamlessly with Okta. The moment Kolide's agent detects a problem, it alerts the user and gives them instructions to fix it. If they don't fix the problem within a set time, they're blocked. Kollide's method means fewer support tickets, less frustration, and most importantly, 100% fleet compliance. So visit kolide.com/AppleInsider to learn more or book a demo. That's KOLIDE.com/AppleInsider. The link is also in the show notes. You can click it there. Our thanks to Kolide for sponsoring this episode. I I really can't wait. I'm just so excited. All right. Well, I want to get to our wish list, but I also want to hear about your Final Cut experience because I did a little experimenting again
Yeah.
after my first bout with it. And it was like, can't hit it off external drives. Womp womp.
Yeah.
Keyboard shortcuts aren't the same. I gave it another go because I recorded my wife doing some cooking stuff and I wanted to make a vertical short. I was like, I'm going to use this, I think how Apple intends it to be used, which is short form video, maybe for social media. Let's try it. So I brought some stuff in. I made a multicam clip. I had one was footage from my Sony mirrorless camera, and I also had my iPhone recording a second shot. Brought that in, made a multicam clip, seamless, looked great, acted great. Everything was as I was hoping for in Final Cut on iPad Pro. Whenever I hit the spacebar to play in the project, I have to wait, I kid you not, 20 seconds.
Goodness.
I literally have a video on Twitter where I recorded myself hitting the spacebar on the Magic Keyboard. 20 seconds later is when it starts playing. Now, different theories on this from some other people on Twitter might be because of the format that I'm recording in, because it's a 10-bit H.264 4K video. Like, it is a big video. But keep in mind, on my Mac, which is an M1 Max, and on my MacBook Pro, which is an M2, and even on my old M1 MacBook Pro that I had, and I still used 4K footage at 10-bit in multicam setups, I never had to wait for this thing to play, especially when the footage was literally copied to the local device. Like, this footage is on the iPad's internal thing. Like, the footage is there. And for some reason, whenever I hit the spacebar, I had to wait 20 seconds. So I powered through it, which was super annoying. I tried to do the auto crop feature, which it supposedly follows the subject. And I have to say, in real world use case, I mean, it was my wife in the video. Her face was clearly visible. The auto crop to follow subject did not work very well. Like, it was kind of drifting way off. It was not keeping her in the middle. Nowhere near as good as you see from apps like CapCut. So I actually had to turn off the auto crop feature and just manually crop in to keep her in the frame. And I was like, this is feeling less and less useful to me, unfortunately. I've been seeing people, on Twitter saying they're using it. Although a friend of the show, Fernando Silva, he tried it for a week. He's going back to LumaFusion for his work. And he edits all his videos on iPad. Like, he doesn't even touch a Mac. And he's doing videos for a 9to5 Mac. So, legit use case. So I don't know. My experience has been even less positive on a second go around. But tell me, what have you thought about it? Because you're a Final Cut guy and you got an iPad Pro.
So there I was in the queue for the World Cafe and trying to choose which food to eat next. I'm looking at my phone, and actually the first thing I see is that somebody's done an article somewhere with the headline, something like, now Final Cut Pro is on the iPad, something. And I didn't even read the something, like wide-eyed. Really? Check everywhere. Went to AppleInsider, get the news, all that stuff. Can I have it now? And I couldn't. I had to wait and wait for it. I was beside myself with excitement to do it. And I actually tried downloading it when I got to the airport, to Heathrow Airport, but I also had to update iPad OS to work and all this stuff. So I contained myself for a few hours and did it. And I really, really like bits of it.
Yeah.
I haven't had any of those problems, but I don't like cropped in social media videos. I do full widescreen stuff, and I've enjoyed it for that. I love the live animation.
That is
with
cool.
the pencil.
That is cool.
Yeah, I created a new sting for something that I thought was really smart, but everybody's done exactly the same one, so that's slightly annoying. Yeah, I wasn't as impressed with the jog wheel as I expected, because that's great for flying use, but I tend to be zooming all over the place, so I just use my fingers still for that. I did really like something I don't like about Final Cut on the Mac is you're playing something back and there's the timeline. If you scroll a bit along and the timeline is totally blank for a moment before it catches up, and that never happened with me on the iPad. You could always see all of the waveforms, and a trivial thing, but I liked it.
Yeah.
I don't very much mind that you can't use external drives. I mean, I had to clear some stuff off my iPad to make space, but it wasn't enormous, except then when you export it to send to the Mac, you're basically doubling the size temporarily, so that's more space needed. I really don't like that you can't then send it back from the Mac. Well, you can. There's an article on AppleInsider showing a kind of a fiddly workaround for it. But in practice, I would like to be able to go back and forth, round trip it. There's some things, some of the live animation really that I like the most, that I would like to be able to just send something to the iPad, do that, send it back. And I can't.
Mm-hmm.
I felt slightly I couldn't go as fast at certain things
Yeah.
as I expected, and you're getting used to a very different system. You're bound to expect it, but just once or twice it was like I could have just done this on the Mac. But then other things, be able to just sit there in my bed, edit a video,
Yeah.
pick it up when I've got 2 minutes and do stuff. I'm really torn because what I like enormously, but I still prefer. This week's 58 Keys video is 97% done on the iPad. I can't remember what it was now, but there's just one thing I couldn't do on there. And I would like to, I tried to do it completely on there, so that was a little disappointing. I'm going to try again with another one that I think will suit it better. But I can't decide whether I'm going to keep it after the 1 month trial. But that's the thing. There is a help thing deep within it.
Yeah.
And if you click through there, it told me no, you can't see the help thing because you're on the free version
What?
of it. But this is when you decide whether to pay or not. And there are lots of things like I couldn't find a way to put a marker to say, come back to this bit. It's just M, I think. Isn't it M?
Yeah, it's M on the Mac. Yeah.
Isn't that funny? You use it when you're doing it, your fingers just do it and you forget it. But yeah, I tried M, Control M, I looked at all the, I've searched for it. I can't seem to just put a marker, which seems a tiny little thing. But then I had a reasonably complicated sequence that was just so, and I wanted to repeat it somewhere else. And I had to copy each bit by itself. I couldn't make a compound clip of all of them in exactly the same. Plus, that's actually a sting that I want to use in the next video. And at the moment, I think I'm going to have to copy and paste each element separately into it. I must be able to export it somehow and import it, but I can't. On the Mac, on the timeline, if you want to bounce between two projects, it's just a back arrow and you do it and you've got everything there. This feels like quite a job to come out of a project and go into another one every time. I'm talking myself out of this and I was so excited and I loved it. Should I keep it? Should I pay my £50 for the year or not?
I feel like any of us who edit in Final Cut on the Mac, even if you've just begun a few months ago, like just stay on that road. I was really keen on like leaving my MacBook Pro at home. Even like when I'm about to travel, I was like, I'll just bring my iPad Pro. And if I need to edit video, I'll just do it on Final Cut on the iPad. And now I'm like, for that, and if I need to record a podcast or something short and I want to plug in a USB mic, I don't want to deal with the iPad's weird audio things, not even knowing if I'm, using the USB mic and voice memos or whatever. And so I'm just like, I'm just going to bring my Mac. And so, yeah, I think it just goes to show again, like looking back at last year's WWDC, where they literally ended the keynote with iPad OS and talking about desktop class apps. It just feels like a cognitive dissonance of like, yay, desktop class. Like, oh, can't set a marker, can't press the letter B for the blade tool. And it just, I don't know. Like, I understand more and more that this product is not for, I guess, people like us, William, who have edited in Final Cut on the Mac for a long time. Like, I guess it's just not for us. Like, it is for a different audience. Someone who has never used Final Cut on the Mac before, maybe has just used iMovie, and this is now the intermediate step going to Final Cut on the Mac. And so looking at it just like that, like I totally get it. I mean, there are the multicam feature in Final Cut is really amazing on the iPad because it functions like it does on the Mac. You can, make adjustments to the different clips inside the multicam edit. The angle editor is really nice when you're editing like that on the iPad. So certain features like multicam, like they knocked out of the park, but other things, it just feels like weird omissions. And then every other time I open it on my iPad, it does say like, buy a subscription. And then I wait a second and I'm like, I swipe around and then it says like, oh, just kidding, you purchased it already. And I'm like, that seems like a weird bug. So
no, I haven't had that. That's
yeah, it's just a strange thing. So again, I don't want to knock it completely because I'm glad it's there. I'm glad it exists and that Apple is still putting effort into pro apps, quote unquote, on the iPad. But I do hope that we see newer versions quickly.
Yeah. And
just that it gets a little better.
If it had been a one-time purchase like it is on the Mac, I would have just straight out bought it, and I would also have bought Logic Pro because I really like Logic Pro. I'm slightly daunted by it, and I don't use it enough that it's worth subscribing to. But when I do use it, I like it immensely. I mean, use Ferrite, but I like Logic Pro better. If it was there on the iPad, it would be great. But as it is, I haven't even tried logic. So did you look at that, or are you sticking firmly in the Ferrite camp?
I'm sticking firmly in the Ferrite camp. I mean, I have Logic from Mac. I've used it many times, and obviously it's a very powerful app, but I just don't care to uphold my whole workflow. And I listened to Marco Arment on ATP talk about Logic Pro on iPad. He was impressed with its parity with the Mac version, at least for the most part. I mean, there are still things that are not equal, but compared to Final Cut, he seemed like Logic Pro has either been worked on longer or just put more effort into it. And so for those wanting Logic Pro, and my kids actually started using it, and they're like, wow, there's so much more here than there is in GarageBand. I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. Like, let's pay for it, play around with it. But for me, I mean, Ferrite, it's just so perfect for my workflow and everything I do. Sticking with it.
Good to have choices, though, isn't it? Like this, at last, to have some really good. I mean, LumaFusion's excellent. Final Cut Pro is pretty good. So
pretty good.
It's nice to have options.
Nice to have options. Yes. I'm excited for the future of it. So speaking of future, iOS 17, it's right around the corner. We're going to see it Monday. I'm like, I don't know if everything's going to be overshadowed by the VR headset, if we're all just going to forget what everything is said about.
A little bit, yes.
Once the headset is announced. But I do want to mention some latest news, leaks, rumors from Gurman. Mark Gurman at Bloomberg. These are some of the latest iOS 17 rumors that AirPlay will be getting some upgrades in iOS 17, especially AirPlaying to things like hotel rooms, which is typically a pain in the neck because you have to be on the same Wi-Fi network. If it's a captive Wi-Fi network, it might not work great.
Yeah.
So supposedly AirPlay in hotels is getting an upgrade. There was that rumor a few months ago, too, about Control Center getting a revamp in iOS 17. So I feel like that could all play into each other. Update AirPlay, change up Control Center, make that all better. We also have lock screen improvements and additional customizations there. Mark Gurman had this smart display rumor, which we talked about, where when you put your iPhone on a MagSafe charger, it would enter kind of like what Nightstand is on Apple Watch, but a much more powerful function where you might be able to have widgets and glanceable information on the iPhone display as it's charging. Wallet is seemingly going to get some improvements, especially with the push into financial services, which I would love to see kind of like Apple Savings be broken out from the Apple Card. So Wallet, maybe seeing some improvements there. And there was a mention of side loading, but I also followed Mark Gurman tweeted the laws in the EU that might require Apple to allow side loading do not go into effect until 2024. So technically, Apple doesn't have to say anything about it right now or do anything. It could wait an entire year. And even if they are changing something like that, Gurman doesn't think they're going to mention it in the keynote. And I do feel like, I don't think Apple's going to tout on one of their biggest events like, oh, yeah, and then you can install apps outside the App Store. Like, I don't think that's going to happen. So, no. So I want to know, William, some of the things that you might be hoping for from iOS 17. We've talked about this before.
Failure of imagination on my part. All those things you just said. Oh, that'd be good. That'd been really handy. We had a very nice TV. Sorry to come back to the cruise. I told you I can't shut up. Really nice TV set. Great range of films. We watched Roman Holiday one night. When we crossed the international date line, they did a special screening of Groundhog Day and all this stuff.
Oh,
but I had loads of things on my iPad that it would have been nice to just chuck up on the big screen. I ripped a load of DVDs over the years, and so it would have been nice to finally catch up on some ancient Doctor Who's on that screen and things like that. So yes, more AirPlay in hotels. That'd be very nice, and presumably like everywhere else.
Over the last month, William, as you've traveled the world, has your thoughts on AI or large language models changed at all? Has your opinion changed now, literally time traveling across the international date line?
Not really. I mean, I found I use ChatGPT instead of Google sometimes just to have a fuller search result. But the number of times I know it's wrong, or it comes up with, what did I look up? I looked up an organization, and it told me the organization didn't exist.
Oh.
And
were you looking for Spectre? Did you search for Spectre? Because I have some news for you.
Right.
It's not one of them.
I've mentioned this before, and actually we've had listeners try to fix things for me. Some of the stuff about automation, I would like just a little bit more on the shortcut side to work, although actually that's also a macOS thing for me. I'm not expecting a lot from macOS, whatever it's called, this time. It feels like it's going to be a sort of snow leopard release by all accounts, but I'd be so happy to be wrong.
I would love shortcuts automations on the Mac. Of all the things, let's just talk about Mac here for a second. the fact that there are no automations in shortcuts on the Mac is just, I don't know, just a huge miss. I feel like that would, have folder and file automations where shortcuts would just monitor in the background, like Hazel. And listen, I love Hazel. You told me about Hazel. I use it still to today. It's a wonderful utility. I don't want Hazel to go away. I think Hazel could still live on, differentiating on features and things like that, which is a great example. We talked about last year, I think, or last week, about the design awards, but like Camo, which is an iPhone webcam utility, like Apple is literally nominating it for a design award, and it's in direct competition with Continuity Camera, one of their own features, but Camo offers additional features and more customizability. And so I think even Apple is good with like, you make a webcam utility. Our customers can pay for that because you offer more features. We offer Continuity Camera for those who just kind of maybe want the seamless experience and no customizations, and there's room for both. And so I think there could be room for both, where shortcuts automations might act upon folder activity or file names and extensions, and Hazel still exists as just a wonderful utility where you can make even more in-depth rules. And I'm sure you got some wild rules in Hazel. I mean, you're just doing crazy stuff over there, William.
Yeah, no, I've only got a few in the end, actually. But I think with Hazel is you set up a rule and then you forget that you've ever done it. You just know that it's going on. So when I moved to a different Mac and I'd forgotten to put Hazel on, it was like, it's broken. What's happening? And I had to try to remember everything. That's when you really appreciate Hazel. Otherwise, it's set and forget, unfortunately. We should have a daily honor Hazel moment. That's what we should have. Yeah.
I need to put that link in the show notes. Listeners, if you have not used Hazel or downloaded Hazel, and the reason why, this is Noodlesoft software. You create rules where, if a file lands in a folder, I'll tell you one of the rules that I have. For YouTube thumbnails, I will get YouTube thumbnail files to use for my work, and the file naming convention that the team uses always has YouTube thumbnail in the title of the file. And so I have a Hazel rule where when a file is either a JPEG or PNG, hits the downloads folder with the words YouTube thumbnail as a part of the title, it automatically moves that to my folder that's buried in the hierarchy of folders in my iCloud drive where all the thumbnails are kept, and I never have to manually move it from my downloads folder to that folder. And it's just a wonderful, and the little notification pops up from Hazel saying, hey, I took care of this for you. You don't need to move it. You know exactly where it is because you made the rule, and it's just wonderful. And so Hazel is great for that kind of stuff. And I really love Hazel when I go to delete an app.
Yes.
Because when you install an app outside the Mac App Store, it's installing everything everywhere. I mean, it's spreading crumbs in the library. You got the library support folder. You got the library application support folder. You got the library application app support folder. It's just files everywhere. All these files all the way down. And with Hazel searches your entire Mac. Listen, they didn't sponsor this episode, but they really should have, because I'm just going off on it now. But Hazel searches your entire Mac for all those little files for the app that you're trying to delete. And it says, hey, you want to throw these in the trash too? Because all of this belongs to Zoom, and they hid stuff all over the place in every corner of your Mac. And then it just takes care of it. I just love Hazel.
Do you use its automatic sorting capabilities?
I'm afraid for you to even tell me what that is, because...
Well, I no longer do this. I have a shorter version, but I take an immense number of screenshots, and it fills up my image bucket folder, as I call it. Mm-hmm. And after a while, I would have Hazel just automatically sorted into, these are the shots from January. And it would just create the January 2023 folder and the February one and just do it all in the background. So next time I needed to look up something, I could, I wrote about that in February. I would know the right place to go. Good. Now I have a simpler one. I realized I never did go back to look to February. So instead, any screenshot that's older than 2 days and isn't tagged with a green dot to protect it, Hazel just deletes it for me. So, that nice image bucket folder stays pure and empty all the time.
I didn't even think about doing a tagged color for like distinguishing Hazel rules.
Yeah, it turned out I have a template I use a lot, and so of course over the months it gets older and older than 2 days. So I just figured out a way to stop that one being deleted. Man. And the quickest thing is to give it a green dot. Wow. And Hazel will recognize it.
See, listen, there's always going to be room for Hazel, even if Apple adds Mac automations, and I still think they should. So there's shortcuts automations there. I feel like notifications on macOS needs to just be overhauled. I feel like I'm clearing notifications on my Mac all the time that I don't even know what's happening there. I don't know what they're doing. And like managing what apps send you notifications is super annoying, but Yeah, I don't know. And system settings. Did you get used to system settings in Ventura? Like, are you good with it?
Yes,
Yeah.
actually, it was terribly problematic at first, but I liked the logic of it. I felt it surfaced things. The wallpaper is in a section called wallpaper, for
Right.
example, things
Right.
like that. I thought that was good. But you're saying that about notification reminds me. My big fix, my wish for iOS 17, might be really niche here. I would like it to fix the fact that sometimes, quite often, text messages on my iPhone don't make a sound. All
Really?
of the notifications say yes, ring alarm bells, but they don't. I know I've got a text the next time I pick up the phone, and there it is, throbbing at me, and I cannot fathom why. So
Oh,
sort
that's
that out,
weird.
please, Apple, just for me. Yeah.
That is strange. Also, the iCloud Drive management on macOS, I mentioned, like downloaded files.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But
Listen to the history in that. Yeah.
I talked about it last week. I just can't even deal. But back to iOS, like you were saying, screen time improvements for me is such a big deal. The bug fixes, not even additional features, just screen time bug fixes, because I'm in there all the time. A lot of times someone doesn't realize how buggy a part of Apple software is until you really have to use it every day, all the time. And that is with me and screen time and kids. Like I now have all,
Oh,
yeah,
of course you have kids,
I have
right?
all three of
Yeah.
my kids are a part of screen time now, trying to manage the content restrictions and the requests for different apps and such, whether they need more time or whatever. All of that is it's kind of a mess. And so
Hmm.
I think Apple does this way better than Android because I've used Google's like family thing and it's not good. I don't want to use a third party system for this. There's lots of third party options. Some of them require installing like profiles on the device so you can do like mobile device management. I don't want to do any of that. I like Apple
Yeah.
screen time settings. They have a great amount of options. Everything's in there that I need. I just need the bugs to be fixed. And that would be great. Thanks.
I'd never thought of that. For me, screen time will pop up and say, "You used your iPhone for 10 hours a day last week," and I'm thinking, "Yeah, you want to make something of it?" And
You get
that's
in a
all.
fight.
Yeah.
You and screen time just get in a fight. Yeah, it does that to me too. I mean, that's fine. But no, it's the management of other accounts. Clipboard Manager would be wonderful on iPad OS. I know you would love that too because you use Keyboard Maestro. Yeah, it'd be
Oh,
great.
yes.
Audio routing on iPad OS. I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever see that, but I hope like you'd be able to actually set input and output audio devices on iPad because you have pro apps there now. You got Logic Pro 10. Set the audio input and output.
So I don't think I follow what you mean there. Being able to plug in an external mic and route it out to record on a different app or something.
Like right now, if you plug in a USB mic to your iPad Pro, you
Yeah.
get no visual indication that the iPad is using that mic for audio. If you open the Voice Memos app,
Oh,
you can like tap on the mic and see if it's there, but you get no like it's using the ATR 2100X USB mic. Like you don't get that.
that's terrible. I didn't know that. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah. And what's difficult too is especially when you want to record video but use an external microphone, you can do it even on your iPhone. Like you can plug in the Lightning to headphone adapter, plug in a microphone headphone splitter, plug in a Rode wireless Go 2, and like use a lapel mic recording a video with your iPhone. Like it works, but you get no visual indication to say, hey, a microphone's plugged into this iPhone and we're using that audio instead of the built-in mic. Because I've also had situations where I've had it all plugged in the same way, but for some reason it just didn't record the audio from the external mic. It just used it from the iPhone mic. So I would love for there to be in the settings app or somewhere. I know this is asking a lot, but you could just go to like general audio settings and say input device, tap a microphone, output device, tap a device, and then like you just know that your iPhone or iPad is using that USB mic and using whatever else as headphones. And then that can carry over into third-party apps, like for something like Riverside, which we're using to record this podcast, where I know that that app is using the default audio device settings that I've set in the system, the device settings. So that's a hope of mine. Because you record videos with your iPhone, right?
Yes, I use. I've totally blanked on the name of it, and they've recently updated it and turned to a subscription model, and it's not quite as good, and it lost me some data, and my mind is
Filmic Pro?
blanked. Filmic Pro, thank you. Yes, I use Filmic Pro, and I use a smart mic Bluetooth thing. I did an extensive review of the Smart Mic on AppleInsider, and the top of it is, listen, I am actually recommending this, but you're not going to believe that, because then you list all the incredibly frustrating problems. But then when you get past those, most of the time, the sound quality is so good. Filmic Pro on the iPhone will actually accept the input from that. But I have... Previously, I've been recording to a separate iPhone and then using the way Final Cut Pro can marry up the sound to video and things like that. So I'm still flat playing around with it. But yes, because if you're recording a video on your iPhone or something, the camera's pointing at you, but the microphone is on the bottom, so it's pointing 90 degrees away from your voice. It's as good as the microphone is. That's a bit of a problem. So an external's better.
I think there is a microphone. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think there's a microphone where the cameras are on the back of the iPhone. Like that little...
On the back of the iPhone?
That little pinhole that's next to the LiDAR sensor, next to one of the camera lenses.
Is that what that pinhole is?
I'm
looking at it now.
I'm pretty sure. I don't want to sound like a crazy
Testing. Nothing's happening.
Wait a minute. I don't want to... Now you're making me wonder. Well, at least the 14 Pro. You have the microphone that's at the bottom. There's actually a microphone where the speaker is, like the headpiece, and then there's the microphone where the cameras are facing outward. So if you're recording video using the rear big camera, there's a microphone pointing that way. Yeah. There you go. The more you learn.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, thank you for that. I will investigate.
Yeah.
I'm probably still going to stick with an external.
No, still stick with an external. Yeah, for sure. But there's 3 mics on your iPhone. Let's see. Redesigned mail, calendar, and contacts. I would love to see. And like legitimate snooze in mail, not this weird like remind me later. That's personal.
Oh yeah. Yes. No. And the follow-up thing. I don't see any way that can be made acceptable. So once I found out you could switch that off. It does occasionally switch itself back on again, and I don't know why, but I find again the button to say no, and that's nice.
That is nice. Yep. Yeah. Moving to iCloud Keychain, we've spoken at length about this, but I do hope to see Apple make some updates to that standalone app, possibly. Would you actually switch to iCloud Keychain away from 1Password if it offered more?
I feel like I am switching inadvertently. I've lost track of what password is where.
Which is not good. That is not a good situation.
No, it really isn't, particularly when you move to a different machine. And I think I have that problem between 2 of my Macs. There are different things in different places. But it hasn't caused nightmares yet, so when it does is when I'll look into it. I really like 1Password, and it's been so useful for so good. I don't want to move away, but sometimes there's Safari offering to do your password right now, and it's like, yeah, okay. And you do it, and that's how they get you.
That's how they get you. Exactly. And lastly, I just have some HomeKit asks. I know your asks are probably all bug fixes, but I would actually like actual multi-user on Apple TV, which would be really nice, not kind of like the weird thing that's there now. Screen time on Apple TV. There are restrictions, but it's not like screen time. You don't get any reports of how long was watched or like restricting specific apps. Would love that on Apple TV. Redesigned Apple TV app, I think, is still kind of needed. And more HomeKit, maybe widgets or like a HomeKit secure video camera, maybe an app. HomeCam is on Apple TV, and it's a great app where you can see all your HomeKit cameras in one place. I feel like Apple could do something there, and it could be a little more useful. You can see your camera stuff if you go into the control center, but a little like cumbersome. But I would love to see some HomeKit improvements too.
I just cannot abide the idea of being deep into a film and ping, up comes a little video window of the postman or postwoman coming to the door for it. I will not have that. So if it has to be cumbersome to go get it, I'm fine with that.
I kind of like the doorbell thing comes up on the screen, at least during the day, because I don't want to miss my package. You know what I mean? I missed my iPhone 1 year, never again.
Yes, we've all had stories like that. But the price of interrupting drama, it's worth it. We don't do that. No.
I know. No. Well, you're just reading script, so it's really just people interrupting you script reading.
I take your point there. Yes. Okay.
You don't actually watch anything.
Actually, when the coronation was on, my wife Angela watched the coronation on the cruise in the pool deck, massive screen, loads of people around her, and I wasn't particularly interested, so I went back to the stateroom, as it's called, and flicking channels, I came across an episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and I couldn't leave it. I watched to the end, and then I looked up the script to see the bit I'd missed. I mean, I know I'd seen it, I know I'd read it, but I just want to see the start again. And unfortunately, that was 3 weeks ago, and I have now read 55 Deep Space Nine scripts. It's like a novel, that series. So yes, I do read a lot. But wait a minute. That reminds me. Now that Ted Lasso is finished, I'm seeing so many reviews saying how disastrous it was, how terrible it became. Are you going to defend it to the end?
Listen, I'll be honest. I have not seen season 3. Part of the reason being, I keep seeing all these reviews of people saying like, oh, they dropped the ball. Season 3 is not good. All I'm saying is, Season 1 of Ted Lasso is still great. And even if you just watch Season 1 in a vacuum, not even watch Season 2, don't go to Season 3, just Season 1, I feel like that is enough and is a good experience.
Well, I'll swap you. You read 55 Deep Space Nine scripts and then get back to me and we'll see what happens.
Can I put it into ChatGPT and ask for a summary? How's that?
Yeah, that'd be really useful. You'd have a great time there. That's what you want, isn't it? To take away anything fun and interesting. No. Good.
William, I'm excited, though. Even with this wish list and these little quirks and stuff, I'm excited to see what's coming Monday. It's going to be a big deal. It's going to be big.
I cannot fathom why I'm so excited, because I can't see a use for the headset. So if that's a big thing, it just won't do it for me. And yet, it's Monday. I'm really looking forward to this. It's going to be so interesting, whatever happens.
The story that they're going to tell around this thing. And, you look back at the iPad, which we probably all thought, don't know how many use that. I never would have thought when the iPad was announced that I would edit podcasts there for hours a week because it was just the best device for that use case and it was the best for me. And, a use case occurred. And so with the headset, like you, I really don't know what I would use it for. I've played a couple games there. I'm not really interested in that. I feel like fitness with a headset is pretty cumbersome. I don't really want to do video conferencing in VR. I'm fine with just a, video call with whatever. But I feel like if there any company is going to create a use case that is compelling and tell a compelling story around a device, it's going to be Apple. And I'm excited to see them do it.
Yeah, I agree. Yes. So let's see what they do. Yes.
Expect the car Monday. No, just kidding. Not the car. You did all this whole episode. I thought you would plug the car, but no dice.
I threw in a mention.
You did. You did. That's right.
I just didn't say it had to be blue. I might be easing up on that part. I don't know.
Whatever color. Yeah. Okay. Well, listeners, let us know what you're excited about, your iOS 17 wish list, and then tune in Monday, 1 p.m. Eastern is going to be the keynote. You can stream it live. I'll be recording a recap podcast immediately after. I try to get out as quickly as possible. So if you couldn't watch the keynote, we'll cover all the big announcements there. The recap podcast might be an hour long. I don't even know. It depends how much they announce. And then, of course, Apple Insider podcast next Friday, and we'll discuss everything in depth. William, it was wonderful having you back. Good to have you.
Yeah, actually, if you don't mind me just saying, it's really nice to be back. But I've been listening to you and Where's Gas Away while I've been in some of the most gorgeous places, and it's been really fun listening to the show. So that's cool.
Well, that's very kind. I would like a flyover screensaver for my Apple TV of William listening to the Apple Insider podcast in his balcony room on the cruise ship passing by Glacier at sunset. That's the kind of fan art we need for this show, William. That's it.
Anyway,
thank you so much. I'm glad you're back, William. Thank you to all of our listeners, and we can't wait to talk to you next week after WWDC. Cheers. I don't know why I said cheers. That's not the thing I
was just thinking, very British of you there.
I was trying to be British, and it just came out.